Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Hail Yes, a Detroit Free Press podcast about University of Michigan athletics. I'm Tony Garcia, Michigan football and basketball writer for The Free, joined by the usual suspects. Suspect number one, Reiner Saban, our Big Ten insider, here to recap Fresno State with us, to preview Texas. Really, we are looking forward a lot. Top 10 matchup, early season. Reiner, the team needs to be in midseason form. Are you?
I don't know if I'm in mid-season form. I'm just kind of day-to-day right now.
Okay, but you're expected. You think you'll play. Like, you're ready to go on Saturday.
I'll be there. Yeah. Yeah.
That's more than I can say. That's why I'm about to get cut. I guess that was a good segue. I will not be at the game this Saturday. Michigan, Texas. Only the epicenter of college football world this year. ESPN on hand. Big noon Fox kickoff. I won't be there. I have a twin sister, Michelle, who I love very much, and she's getting married in Boston this weekend. So no big house for me, but we will be totally fine with the coverage. Obviously, had I not said it now, I'm not sure anyone would have noticed other than us, but who knows? Andrew, I'm sure you have full faith in the boys for the coverage to sort of help supplement what you'll lose, if we can call it that, in my absence.
Yeah, well, we'll just continue with the football metaphor here after Reiner got us started with it. Next man up, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's going to step up a little bit more. Amon-Ra St. Brown goes down. Need a little bit more from Jamison Williams and Khalif Raymond. So not that you guys are necessarily, not that Tony. Tony's thinking
I was looking around for the Amon-Ra St. Brown in the room.
And Reiner is no Khalif Raymond, but we'll give him maybe a Sam Laporta, or who else could he be? Prime Calvin Johnson.
That was a double insult.
That's a little bit too much. Prime Calvin Johnson. Yeah. I saw him lost a bunch of guys when I covered the Cowboys in Detroit when Jeff Heath was getting abused.
Grand Haven's finest.
Yeah. And Grand Valley.
My boys went to high school with Jeff Heath, actually.
Or no, did he play at Saginaw State? I think he played that.
In college, right? But Grand Haven High School.
Yeah, right. And so anyway, he was getting abused.
I think that's a little bit of a mismatch. Calvin Johnson on Jeff Heath.
Exactly. Yeah.
My God.
I think you realized that too. That was embarrassing.
The Cowboys love their mid-Michigan connections because Cooper Rush, isn't he still the Cowboys' backup? And he played at Lansing Catholic.
Brandon Carr covered for a long time. He was a Flint guy. So, yeah. He played at Grand Valley State, I think. Or Ferris. Was it Ferris State? I can't remember.
Get on the Google machine for us and find that out. But that ends this episode of Dallas Cowboy Wolverine talk.
Yeah.
But you're talking about talking about overmatched, right? In some of those matchups, that is not what Michigan did to Fresno State week one,
right? In
the way we had seen Michigan do the past 6 non-conference games the past 2 years, right? You go back to 2022, they outscored their opponents like 166-17. Then last year, even though they were far from a finished product in those East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green games. All of them ended as 4-score games, or right around there, and so none were ever truly in doubt. You could not say that about this weekend's game when Fresno State scored a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. It was 16-10 before Michigan's offense finally, for the first time on its 10th drive of the day, both crossed midfield and got into the end zone. So, Reiner, I'll leave it big picture. I wrote after the game that's kind of almost exactly what I thought was to be expected, right? Maybe not cover, sort of struggle on offense, lean on the defense. I can't say I knew Dominic Zavato was going to be Jake Moody 3.0, 4.0. My goodness. But Reiner, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was to be expected. The offense was not a well-oiled machine as we expected, and the defense was pretty darn good for 3 quarters and 5 minutes pretty much up until about the time that they started to, allow that drive that led to the touchdown. They also showed some vulnerability afterwards on the drive after Michigan's kind of answer to that, but then Will Johnson saved them with the pick six, and so there was some concern, I think, with this team based on how the offense is going to affect the defense. Because I think, again, I've been saying this and pounding this from the very beginning, but this is not the same formula necessarily. I don't know if they can create the same formula where, again, their ball control, eating up clock, just totally destroying these teams kind of physically and even mentally, and just draining them and from an offensive standpoint, and then giving the defense as good of a situation as possible. And I just think, given in this game, I mean, the defense had to play all 4 quarters and the offense wasn't able to sustain possession at different points during the game. So I think it was a little bit concerning for the long term as it relates to Michigan.
Agreed. It got better as the game went on. Like if you're looking at the drive chart, their first 5 drives, only one of them lasted more than 2.5 minutes. Extremely concerning, right? But then you look at their next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drives, not counting the kneel down, 6:56, 5:32, 3:25, 3:28, 4:17. That's more like it. That's gonna get. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's closer to sort of what you want. And I think it's a positive that, if you want to look at it that way, that it's not like they started that way, right? Their scripted drive, like bang, bang, bang. And then once they're out of plays, they look discombobulated. No, it was the opposite, right? Like what they had sort of drawn up didn't quite work the way they'd hoped. I mean, I guess they got out to a nice 7-0 lead thanks to the early pick. But after that, there was nothing doing. Then once they settled in, started leaning, they found it. But I do have a question for you, Reiner. If you were ranking your concerns from the game, which of these 2 would you put first? Was it the inability to get the ball in the passing game to anybody not named Colston Loveland? Quickly, Loveland, 8 catches, 87 grabs, and a touchdown. Everybody else on the team, 8 catches, 34 yards, no touchdowns. Or is it secret option number 2? I guess it's not that much of a secret. Donovan Edwards, continued struggles, 11 rushes, 27 yards, 13 touches, still 27 yards. He did catch a touchdown. But I mean, in my post game, I sort of chalked that up to really great design and tendency and breaking tendency by Kirk Campbell. He brings Alex Orji into the game by the goal line. Everybody thinks he's going to hand it off. Little play action, wide open dump. So I don't know how much credit. Not to take away the touchdown from Donovan, I just don't know that we can credit him for it all that much, because I think anybody who was standing there would have caught it. So which of those concerns you more?
Probably the first one, just because it starts with the running game, and they were unable to establish the run early. If they don't do that against Texas, they're going to be toast. And so they've got to establish the run early. But I think the other concern is a really big one too, because I mean, Texas is going to bracket Colston Loveland, and they're going to try to take him out. So somebody's going to have to step up in the receiving game. And then, the one thing I don't think that those receivers did was create a lot of separation either. And they didn't get open very much. And they didn't seem to necessarily always be on the same page as Davis Warren. I mean, you saw that one deep pass to Tyler Morris where he kind of misjudged the flight and kind of pulled up on his route. So I think, that's a big concern too. I mean, I don't think you can necessarily diminish one in favor of the other. I think they're both pretty big concerns. And so, but I would probably lean with the Donovan Edwards thing, just because, again, this offense, it starts with its running game.
I mean, this podcast, I think we've sort of been on top of the Donovan Edwards thing the last couple years, and sort of the level of concern not getting when he makes his big plays, he's a firecracker. We've seen him run for 85, 75 against Ohio State, right? He had a one cut. That same year against Penn State, he's going out right. He just sort of cuts back at home when Michigan pulled away in the second half. He had 65-yard touchdown. We've seen Donovan be very explosive. I would almost argue that those have been the exception and not the norm, right? It's the what we've come to see in the last 15 plus games is inefficient running. I mean, Donovan Edwards is averaging 2.5 yards per carry right now. Last year in the regular season, it was 3. Michigan deems inefficient runs as 3 or fewer. So if your normal standard run is an inefficient run, and then you got Davis Warren at the press conference, not by any means calling him out by name, but just saying the MO of this offense, we got to stay on schedule, we got to stay on track, we need someone who is consistently going to get us 3, 4, 5 yards. It feels very clear to me there is going to have to be a shift towards Kalel Mullings. And then use Donovan as the change of pace. In the same way, they're going with Warren and using Orji as the change of pace. Because, I mean, just some of the advanced numbers, right? Donovan Edwards did not force a missed tackle in week 1. Kalel Mullings forced 5. Donovan Edwards averaged 1.64 yards after contact. Kalel Mullings averaged better than 4.2. Donovan Edwards had 2 plays of more than 5 yards on 13 touches. Kalel Mullings had 10. There's just, any way you slice it, any way you look at it, eye test, metrics, and this is not to say that, Donovan Edwards should live on the bench. I think they need to find a new role for him. Again, if you've been pounding the complementary pieces of defense, offense, which you have, I feel that's what I've been pounding. They got to find a new role for Donovan, because true tailback, not it. Or I don't think so. Are you as far down that path?
I'm very much more closer to your side than the opposite side of that debate. I think it's pretty obvious that he's not necessarily reliable, on first and second down. As he's going to keep you on schedule. So I think, Kalel Mullings can do that. He can get you the 3-yard tough run that may not be sexy, but, it'll help you just keep on schedule. And so that's what you want in an offense. That's what this offense wants. And so I think he's a better fit. He's, again, like a Blake Corum, like a Hassan Haskins. That's what you want. You can have the home run hitter, supplement that, but he can't be the guy necessarily in this particular offense. So yeah, I think that they could use Donovan as a receiver. They don't have great receivers. Let's just be flat out honest about it. They don't. So why not split him out wide, use him in that capacity? He's shown he can catch the ball. So why not get him out in space?
Start him in the backfield, flex him out, and get him in man coverage on a linebacker. Right? Someone where he has room to work and clearly has the athletic advantage. Donovan can be the better player one-on-one. There's no question about that. It's all the decision making that goes into the layers of being a running back, the timing, the angles, the cutbacks. Just the sheer will. Donovan was talking in the spring about getting his fire back, right? And even in the spring game, which is weird because you're running through, your own teammates. I think he only ran 4 times. 3 of them, he fell forward. That feels like nothing to me when watching Donovan Edwards. That's everything. Because if you're not missing any tackles, forcing any missed tackles, 0, and then you're averaging 1.6 yards after the carry, you're not making people miss and you're not breaking them, right? So what are you doing? If as soon as someone's going to get to you, you're down, that's not going to work. You got to make some individual plays.
Oh, sure. And I don't know, though. Again, his history has shown outside of the spring game, really, he hasn't done that. He hasn't run hard between the tackles. Doesn't really, run well when there's hole is not really wide open, and he's got an unabated path to the second level. So I think we all seen it. We've seen enough of it to realize that this is an issue, and don't know why the coaching staff is so hesitant to use Kalel as the top back here.
I think you might. I just have a feeling it'll change this week a little bit. Not based on, nobody's told me that. That's just gut feel. Not necessarily start, but I think they're going to have to realize it. But it can't all be placed on Donovan. Football is not a one man band. And he did have a first down, like his only first down of the game. I guess his touchdown is a first down, but his best run of the game is probably 8 or 9 yards, kind of bounced out to the left side, got called back for a hold on Josh Preeb. And just kind of fitting, even when it goes right, it goes wrong. That's sort of how it's been lately for Dono. But the offensive line.
Well, that was not that. Obviously a hold creates the opportunity for him to run.
It did. I'm trying, Ryder. I don't want to just bag on Donovan because he has said a lot of the right things this offseason.
Right.
He has tried. His teammates like him. His coaches love him. But we do have to be honest with our listeners, which you and I always are going to do, no matter what. And if he's just not getting the job done, I'm trying not to just hammer him. He's grown on me. He's grown on me.
To his running, because he has to get outside, and it has to be right for him to, he's not going to necessarily create that space. He's going to have to rely on it. So in this case, the hold, did bring him open. And so that goes to the let's go to the offensive line, though, because, that kind of segues into that. I think the offensive line had some issues, obviously, early on. They only had 35 rushing yards, 16 attempts in the first half, and got off to a really slow start. And again, their inability to establish the run really affected the rest of the game. And I think it affected the passing game with Davis Warren. They weren't able to get any play action. And I think it also restricted their ability to go deep as much. And so I think that was an issue. And then you had the center switch. I mean, you had Dominique Udusi. I always forget his name.
Tom Gadis.
Gadis. Okay. Anyway, he first of all, he going from the defensive line to center, being able to do that, it was pretty impressive. I mean, given the fact that the center has to do a lot of protections, call protections, kind of get things aligned. So that was actually impressive, that, in my opinion, just to be able to kind of come out there and do that the first game. However, there was some breakdowns. Davis Warren got a sack, or was sacked pretty early, and it was again unabated to the quarterback, and that was obviously a breakdown. But then again, they put in Crippen. They seemed to get some momentum there at center. There seemed to be a little bit more solid blocking across the board when he was in the game. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to see that position is as fluid as it is. And it's a little bit concerning, in my opinion, just because you do have a new quarterback there. And the center quarterback, it is such a big deal. And it's going to be interesting to see how that works out, especially against Texas, because they're going to give a lot of disguises and interesting pressures their way. And they're going to have to really account for that in this game.
Well, that sack you talk about was, classic, as Josh Preet would call it, a missed assignment. It was a total miscommunication. You had the right guard, Gio Al-Hadi, who felt, I haven't spoken to him yet, but body language and the way he sort of handed this defender, it looked like he was passing him off to the inside to his center, which would have been Gadis. But Gadis went left and doubled, went on a double team with Josh Preet, and then not as someone just flying unabated, as you say, it's up the A gap, right? The shortest path to the quarterback. And Warren, immediately went down. He was tackled before he could get rid of it. But Preet did say that they are kind of locking in this 5. They have found they do now have a starting 5, which is what we saw Saturday. It's Wednesday now. It's been a long time since Saturday. It just makes you wonder about the way they approached it in the spring, right? And fall, summer and fall, all these rotations and trying to get these guys. When did you start solidifying this line, right? How late into camp was Andrew Gentry playing, and Jeff Percy and Raheem Anderson, right? And whoever else, and Nathan Afobe.
And being the right tackle is, also kind of a late, a lot of people thought it was.
That was Andrew Gentry. That was Andrew Gentry's job until the last week.
Yeah, or
Percy.
Yeah, right. But like in the back of the spring, it was Gentry and Percy, and you didn't hear it in Link's name. So, again,
I think he was left backing up Hinton in the, but that's a big shift. That's a big shift to go from left to right. So no doubt. Is there anything we missed from Fresno State before we take a quick break?
Well, again, the defense.
Zavada maybe. Oh, defense.
Yeah,
okay,
again, I thought the defense looked pretty darn good, again, for, most of the game. The blitzing that Wink, Morningdale was known for came to fruition. They hit home on some, didn't hit home on others. He blitzed on 23 of the 39 dropbacks. So majority of the snaps were blitzes, and they were able to generate some pressure. Josiah Stewart was obviously in the backfield a lot. The one thing I, was surprised at was the fact that they targeted Will Johnson as much as they did. Johnson got his revenge, obviously, with the pick six, 86 yards return late in the game. And so I think overall it was a pretty strong performance, but you saw them kind of wear down a little bit at the end. And again, that kind of speaks to what the game was. This is not like any other, the previous season that they've had, or recent season, where, again, starters are playing late in the game or early in the season. And so that was the case. Will Johnson was on the field with, less than 5 minutes remaining, and they had to kind of seal the game with that interception. So they were getting pushed at the end. And so I think in some ways it was good heading into the Texas game, because they're going to have to play a 4-quarter game anyway.
So was so was Mason. So was Kenneth Grant. All the guys you expect to make plays. And really, if there was any quote unquote concern, I'm with you. Defense was exceptional. Fresno State, averaged better than 30 points a game last year, returned their all-league quarterback, their top wide receiver targets, added 2 FCS All-Americans. They have an elite running back, right? This is a unit that knows what it's doing. 10 points. That was fantastic work. I mean, 2 turnovers, 3 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 2 of 11 on third down. Lots to like. But if there is concern, you were right. It was that, I mean, it's how it all works together, how it all comes together, offense, defense, special teams, and just the defense needing to strain that long and be on the field that long. Something Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham haven't been used to. And I'm not sounding any alarms, but neither of them were terribly dominant in the opener, I think you could say. I don't think either of them made any of their signature plays. And even KG didn't grade out terribly well if you look at the advanced metrics on Pro Football Focus. Now, I'm not going to get bent out of shape over it, but it's just like, right? It's just a little note that you make, and it's just one of those things you think.
Well, also the depth, I mean, at that position is really not that great. Just judging.
Rayshon Benny helped a lot. He had maybe his best game.
He's the third one, but I mean, after that, it's like, they don't really have that.
It might be Etta, but I don't know that I saw much of him.
Yeah, because I mean, Benny, last year was in a rotation of 4 guys. I mean, you had Chris Jenkins, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, and Rayshon Benny. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that those little things, they add up over the course of the season, a little depth thing. And so they're going to have to develop probably another guy at that position and, at least a person who they can rely on in, sub situations.
Yeah, I'm trying to look. I mean, you got Trey Pierce, 3 snaps, Etta 2 snaps, Ikawana 4 snaps, and these are all at the defensive tackle position. Other than that, KG played 41, and Rayshon 23, Mason Graham 46. And for what it's worth, the only player who, according to Pro Football Focus, had a lesser grade than Kenneth Grant was Jaden McBurrows, and he gave up the touchdown as the nickel. So just something to watch. All right, that's good for the Fresno State recap. Don't go anywhere. Preview in Texas next, then we got the picks. This is Hail Yes. All right, welcome back. Time to take a look ahead now. Number 3, Texas comes to town against number 9, Michigan. First top 10 matchup of the season. College, what's it called? College game day. That's what it's called. Big noon kickoff. Everybody will be on hand, and this is a big test. I mean, it's you can feel it in the air. You can hear it. Like Michigan's played in. I just wrote a story about how Michigan's played in tons of big games lately, right? I mean, Ohio State's, Penn State's, Rose Bowls, or Cotton Bowls, national championships. All of those things have been pretty much outside of Penn State, have been after Thanksgiving, right? They're all November or later. Never in this era of Michigan's resurgence, have they been tested anything like what we think we're going to see in a top 5 game against Texas?
Well, yeah,
this early in September.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the schedules the last couple of years have been awful, and a lot of people have poked at the fact that Michigan hasn't scheduled tough, and now they have a really, really, really tough matchup with Texas coming into town. I mean, the saving grace is that it's at home, so that's beneficial. But I mean, again, Texas looked a lot sharper in the opener against Colorado State than Michigan did against Fresno State. And, I think that's influencing how people feel about this matchup. Michigan's first impression wasn't great. The defense was solid, but I mean, again, that's not, a Power 5 level, or Power 4, I should say now, a level, offense. I mean, it's a group of 5 good offense, but not that Power 4.
I think Fresno State has a better offense than some Power 4 teams. I think Fresno State has a better offense than Iowa.
We're talking about, I mean, there's a gap between an elite group of 5 offense and a Power 4. I mean, across the board, you've got, again, bigger guys on the line. You've got, big.
No, generally, of course. I think highly of Fresno State. I'm biased. My mom went there.
I think Fresno State,
I think they're a good team.
Was a solid team. Now, I don't know what again, we're basing it off of what happened last year, and we have no idea. But and same with all these teams, we're basing it off a little bit of what happened last year. But it's a whole new year. I mean, and again, what we saw in the first game, Texas looked a little bit more in rhythm and in top form than, say, Michigan did, especially on offense. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a tough matchup, especially given the fact that you got a really high-level QB and some very speedy receivers on the outside. And, I mean, obviously their one weakness is at running back, where, a couple guys got hurt, in the offseason and preseason camp. And so, but, it's Texas. They've got some guys, and running back's probably the most fungible position that you have, essentially. And so,
at the NFL level, it certainly is.
Right. Even at the college level, I think, if Michigan had to resort to putting Ben Hall in there, I don't think they would have a huge drop off. And I don't think necessarily they would, as opposed to other positions like wide receiver or tight end or, something like that. So I think, I think running back is probably the one place you could probably afford to have an injury, especially in football. And so I don't think that is as big of a thing as it would be if the quarterback went down or even look, Texas even has Arch Manning. And so, not that I think he's at the same level of Quinn Ewers, but, they've got some real firepower. And Steve Sarkisian's a great play caller. He, when he was at Alabama and
drink.
When he was at Alabama,
I said drink because Ryder mentioned Alabama.
Yeah, shut up. Yeah, he was great at finding the matchup problem, or creating a favorable matchup. He'd always find one thing, and I think, they'll probably look at, Jair Hill. He's going to be the probably guy that they try to attack.
That's an option. We'll see. Let's just, before Reiner steals all my notes, let's run down all of the Texas preview. That way we can familiarize ourselves with the Longhorns. It's 52-0 over Colorado State last week. You just heard him mention both quarterbacks. It's Quinn Ewers, who was on the cover of EA Sports College Football 25 with Donovan Edwards and Colorado's Travis Hunter. He was very good in week one. He's on the short list of the Heismans. There's a reason for it. 20 of 27, 260 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. But again, Colorado State is dreadful. Michigan hammered them 51-7 a couple years ago. Not that means they're dreadful, but it's just a team you dispose of pretty quickly, pretty easily. So I don't know how much to take away from what Texas did. I do want to touch on what Reiner mentioned, the running backs. CJ Baxter, who was going to be their guy. He was supposed to be sort of the next stable, or the next running back in the stable. He was lost for the year. Then like a few weeks later, Christian Clark, I think he's a freshman, but he's gone as well. So now they're relying on Jarrett Gibson and Jaden Blue, who both ran 10 times, 11 times for 67 and 57 yards, respectively. And then they're both talented. Maybe they weren't expected to be the RB1 this year, but plenty capable, as Reiner said. And there is a ton of talent out wide at speed at wide receiver. I would say it probably starts with Isaiah Bond, Michigan familiar with him from Alabama last year in the Rose Bowl. Then you got Matthew Golden, highly regarded recruit who scored a couple touchdowns in the opener. Ryan Wingo, Jonte Cook. Those are just some names to watch out for on the Texas offense. And Reiner, this is what I'm going to be looking for when Texas has the ball against Michigan, and in just sort of that chess match about Wink Martindale. You talked about how he loves to bring the pressure. Steve Sarkisian often does have an answer. Where is your weakness? What's something I can exploit? Just even with my layman brain, I feel like something I can easily understand. If you're bringing pressure, you dump it off quick, right? Wherever the pressure comes from, that's where you throw the ball. You fill where the defender left. And if Wink Martindale is going to be blitzing 60% of times, Quinn Ewers loves to get the ball out. If Michigan's not sacking him, if they're not moving his feet, if they're not shifting the pocket, if they're not collapsing it, it could be a long day. I think that matchup, Michigan's defensive line, the pressure they're able to get on Ewers versus Texas's offense, spreading it around, getting it out quickly. Reiner, we've seen this is what Northwestern used to do to Michigan State for years, if you remember, right? They would just completely neutralize their pass rush with and abandon the run, frankly. And they would just do short outside passes and use that as the run game and just chip away. Could you see something like that?
Yeah, I also think, it's going to be a big game for Zeke Berry. I think, nickel position, especially with them possibly running some bubble screens and things like that to those receivers. It'll be, probably moving down to the slot. So I think, it's going to be a big tackling game for the DBs too. I think they're going to try to run a lot of quick stuff. And like you mentioned, to probably neutralize the pass rush. I also think it's going to be potentially dangerous for Wink Martindale to try to blitz too much. I mean, if he goes too much with that, I mean, they're going to expose, the secondary to, one-on-one matchups. And like, this is where Rod Moore's absence is going to probably be, felt a little bit. I mean, given the fact that, he's not there back there to provide cover in the deep half. And so, I mean, they've got, Quinton Johnson and, back there, Makari Page too. And so, I mean, but at the same token, it's, Rod Moore would have been a huge asset in this game just because of what he could do to provide that kind of safety net there. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Wink Martindale handles this, whether he relies heavily on blitzing and to kind of just tries to bring the thunder early, or if he kind of tries to play it a little bit safe early on, just to kind of feel it out and see what, Sark is, coming up with. But I think, this is a potentially dangerous matchup just for the sense that, Wink is so aggressive and Sark is able to find kind of answers to those kind of things and is able to identify a matchup advantage usually. I'm curious to see what he comes up with.
Yeah, equally as curious on the other side of the ball, which, I mean, we didn't talk about Davis Warren a ton in the first half of this show, where obviously we could, right? I mean, if you are talking about the one major change with Michigan, and there are so many to pick from with 10 new starters on offense, the entire defensive staff having been revamped, 13 players going to the combine, there is one staffer on the entire roster who was in the same position as he was last year, and that's wide receivers coach Ron Bellamy, right? There is a ton of change. But I think, number one, is the quarterback. It's Davis Warren, of course. And week 1, 15 of 25, 118 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. This is, I mean, nobody even knew that it was going to be Warren before then, right? This is now his real, it was Warren, Orgy, the battle lasted all the way. Michigan really kept that under wraps the whole time. Now it's really his turn. He was talking earlier this week about, I mean, he's not just a feel-good story. He feels he belongs. I mean, just, is it possible to overstate, I mean, what this moment is for Warren and just, I mean, really what's on his shoulders here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot for him to handle here. I mean, again, given the fact that the receivers really didn't produce much, and so he was almost completely reliant on Colston Loveland. And, he's going to have to do more, either go through his progressions more and hope that those receivers get open or such. Because again, Texas is not going to just allow Colston Loveland to just, get catch after catch. I mean, they're going to have to get something out of their passing offense. And so there's a lot on Davis Warren in this game. And, it's not there's always the quarterback that is responsible for everything that goes on, even though he's kind of the leader of the offense. I mean, there's a lot of things that come into play, whether it's the offensive line, again, the receivers getting separation. And so in the first game, it wasn't just all, his numbers were 15 of 25, 118, 1 touchdown and interception. And those aren't great numbers by any means, but it wasn't all him either. So there's going to have to be major, major improvements in the passing game between week 1 and week 2.
The only reason I'm not going to say Texas will just absolutely shut down Colston Loveland, because of course that's going to be the design, right? It looks very clear. Loveland is the number one option. But Kirk Campbell, which you were calling all offseason, which you knew, I mean, I think he deserves some kudos for what he did just with Loveland. I think he kind of saw that, this is we need to go to him. I don't know that Michigan wanted to have to go to him, but they knew they needed to. And on 24 pass snaps where he was on the field, this is per Pro Football Focus, Loveland was lined up in the slot 7 times, out wide 7 times, and in line 10 times. That is how you break tendency. That is how you get different looks, get different matchups, and then you can find their weakness, right? And then once they have their chess move, if you've made the first move, once they counter, you can be ready for their counter. And I mean, of course, it's going to be the back and forth. It's the game within the game. And Loveland is all capital letters, GAME.
But you kind of wish also that, Marlon Klein or a second tight end came out and was able to.
I was underwhelmed with Max Bredesen. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just thought they were going to use him. I was ready to see him bulldoze some lines. I just don't know that I really saw him do anything.
Right. Yeah. I think, again, some of the play designs didn't work out, and some of that may have been the edge blocking again, with, some of the bubble screens and such, that those things got shut down pretty quickly against Fresno State. So, like, you worry about that, being able to work against Texas too. So if some of that short stuff doesn't work, where do they go? Because the deep stuff also wasn't working. I mean, the fourth pass that Davis Warren threw was intercepted deep. He underthrew it. I think Sherrone Moore indicated that Frederick Moore didn't make much of a play on the ball, but there were 3 defenders around him. So
there shouldn't have been a third defender. It should have been 2, but it was so underthrown.
Yeah,
a third defender did come.
And so I mean, the just overall, it wasn't like again a terribly impressive performance from the passing game, and a lot of people were concerned. And then you have the Alex Orji element. I mean, how much is he going to be used in this game? How much can he realistically be used? I mean, if everybody thinks he can't throw the ball, you're pretty much telegraphing your intention whenever he's in the game, what you're going to do. And so, obviously he kind of turfed that pass late in the game that made everybody like, oh, maybe he can't, carry the offense with his arm at all. And so that was concerning. Of course, maybe, they've got some kind of trick up their sleeve, or maybe he was sandbagging it. And
yeah, I love the idea of, in a 6-point game, Alex Orji's throwing his first legitimate pass downfield. They're like, hey, skip it, just bounce it. We're playing the long game here. Yeah, nobody will see it coming.
Based on Tyler Morris's body language after that play, I didn't get the sense that was intentional.
Yeah, no, not so much. So under how Michigan can win, my top note says Kalel Mullings, hammer him. Do you think that's just because of everything we've talked about, the staying ahead of the sticks, the rhythm, the ball control, the starting the run game to open up the play action, the pass? I feel like a lot of what Michigan wants to do, stop me if you've heard this before, centers around their run game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think establishing the run is going to be critical. If they don't do that early, they're toast. Again, I think it's pretty obvious that, from every, they want to keep viewers off the field anyway, so they're going to have to sustain drives. They're going to only be able to sustain drives through the running game. Passing game hasn't shown enough yet that they can, go to that down to down, like they can possibly with the running game. And the only person who's shown that he can do that consistently is Kalel Mullings. So I agree that they're going to probably have to hammer him early on and use him and hope that he can move the sticks by himself on some possession, or some series where he's literally running it 3 times and, picking up that first down.
All right. Now, does that mean Michigan will win or not? We'll find out after this break when we get into the picks. Don't go anywhere. This is Hail Yes. Welcome back. Time for the picks. And that's when we bring in, I don't even think I introduced him the first time. You know him by now, our editor and producer, Andrew Burkle, the red hot Andrew Burkle.
I was watching the scores on Saturday. I was like, oh, that's a win. That's another win. That's another win. I went into the Fresno State Michigan game and the Texas A&M Notre Dame game 3-0, and then Notre Dame pulled it out. So I went 4-0, and then Michigan let me down big time. So we'll see what that leads to this week. But yeah, I'm excited for another week of picks here. Not as many good games, so we're going to keep it to 3 plus a surprise one I dropped for you guys at the bottom that we'll get to here shortly. But yeah, I guess why wait any longer, right? People want to know who we're gonna pick in this Texas Michigan game. So Reiner, Michigan hosting Texas, 7.5 points. You think they cover?
Yeah. Well, yes. And so I think I'm going Texas. I think it'll be like a 10-point game. I think Texas just has, more of a complete team than Michigan has shown so far. And, I think the offense is concerning enough that against Texas where it's going to be hard to keep up. And there was enough of a vulnerability from Michigan's defense, especially late in the game, that makes me wonder about, whether they can totally suppress Texas, even early on. There was, some concerning aspects of the defense that would lead you to believe that, Texas could exploit some things there. So while I was impressed with the defense, I still think there was enough there combined with the fact that the offense was just not up to speed this early on. And so I'm going to go with Texas, winning about a 10-point, with a 10-point lead at the end.
Entirely possible. Well within the realm of possibility. Michigan hasn't lost a game at home with fans in the crowd in 5 years. I recognize this is a different time. This is a different test. But I mean, Ohio State's come in during that time. Capable Penn States have come in during that time. Even Illinois, they survived a scare, right? You can't play your A game every week, right? There are times. Yet Michigan's won 16 in a row. They haven't lost at the Big House in a long time. I'm on the fence about the winner of this game still. I'm not there yet. But if you're giving me more than a touchdown at home, really big time environment for Michigan, I'm just going to take the points. I'm going to take the points. I'm going to take the hook. I think that's enough. Later in the week in my scouting report Friday, I will make an official pick for who actually wins the game. But for now, I will say that Michigan covers that number.
So
I think just because mainly they're the rationale being, sorry, Andrew, I didn't give a reason why. I just said, I just think they, everything we've been saying the last 40 minutes, Kalel. I think the time of possession is going to be better, a little bit better in the first half. They're going to rush for more than 35 yards, I think, in the first half, and they'll just be in a better spot. They'll hit their stride earlier. They got a lot of the jitters out week one, I think, but this is a much tougher test, obviously.
So I actually would find myself, I think, a little closer to Reiner than Tony as far as thinking Michigan can maybe win this game just because of what we've seen so far. Tony mentioned this: Michigan hasn't lost the Big House in 5 years if you don't count the COVID year. But Quinn Ewers is probably the best quarterback to come into the building besides C.J. Stroud. Stroud came in there. That was obviously a huge win. But Stroud was the quarterback for the Ohio State at Michigan game, right? Am I drawing blank on that? It was Stroud.
Okay. That's one. Yes.
Yeah. In 21.
Right. Okay. So it was Ewers and Stroud are the two best quarterbacks to come into the Big House. I think Texas gets it done, but from a gambling perspective with that line, we're picking based off the line. 6.5 and 7.5 is arguably the biggest jump that you can have as far as a spread. And this started around 6.5. It opened at 6.5, and now it's up to 7.5. That's a huge difference. So I'm going to take the extra point for Michigan and ride that. But I do think Texas has the more complete team right now. And that doesn't mean, look at Alabama last year. Alabama was a tough out by the end of the year for the Wolverines. I think Michigan can get better throughout this year, but this is a full reload for Michigan in a lot of ways. So I think Texas is just in a better position to win this game right now. Let's move on to another team in the state here. Michigan State traveling to Maryland. Ryder, you were at the Michigan State game in week one. What did you see, and what do you think happens in this MSU Maryland game here?
Well, I was really actually impressed with the defense. Joe Rossi really came in, and they were much more competitive. I felt like challenging receivers, limiting any kind of downfield throws. Not giving up acres of space and the passing game to Cam Fancher. Of course, I don't think he's much of a thrower anyway, but that defense was really good. The concerning, obviously, part was Childs' play. He was pretty awful. The offensive line had some breakdowns and wasn't totally set. They couldn't get Nate Carter really going from a running game standpoint. K'Ron Lynch-Adams was pretty impressive, though, running when the seas parted in one run, which was a 63-yarder. So I think, there were some good aspects to what Michigan State did, especially from a defensive perspective, but they didn't get enough from the offense to really make me feel like they can hang with Maryland. And so Maryland's got some really good skill players, and Billy Edwards is, even back when he was a backup to Talia Tagovailoa, showed some stuff there. And, again, Maryland always seems to have some firepower, especially under Mike Locksley. Mike Locksley's got that program up to a level where they're, going to a bowl game every year, and on the plus side of the win-loss record at the end of the season. So I'm going with Maryland to cover.
And they're big. They're probably the big winner of the whole Big Ten realignment. They're finally done playing Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State every year. And they had, I mean, obviously in this recent era, they had surpassed MSU, but certainly in the 13 years across the Big Ten, Michigan State was a problem in that division as well.
Yeah, sure.
For the first two-thirds of that time. I mean, obviously, you said a lot of it. I mean, they hammered, I think it was Howard or something. Like, it was like 50-7. It was a very big win. UConn. Thank you. Sorry. And just, this is a good test for Michigan State, I feel. But they're just, I didn't see him get Jack Demling involved. Aiden Childs, while, raw, talented, high upside. Oof. There were some really tough throws there. It was a tough watch. The game was a tough watch against FAU. There's no doubt about it. Going on the road, Maryland just feels like Maryland's a better team. I mean, they've been around longer. They've been together longer. This is what it used to feel like when Maryland was going to Michigan State. It's like, yeah, they got some good pieces, but they're not there yet, right? Like, it's not all together. Like, MSU is the better team. And so now it's the others. It's the inverse of that. So Maryland will cover, I think, by like 13. Maryland by 13.
I don't even know if I said the spread. It's 8.5, which, imagine telling a Michigan State fan that, when Mark D'Antonio was coach and had the program running, you beat 8.5 point underdog on the road at Maryland. But Maryland it feels like they're one of those teams who kind of is a few breaks away from maybe like a Juice Williams, Illinois type run, where all of a sudden you got
part of what you mentioned Juice Williams because Loxley coached him.
Yeah, well, I actually did not know that. But
he was OC there.
You know what I mean? Where it's like they're really close to being there. So I think Michigan State. It's too early of a test. It's it's a good test, but it's too early of a test. So I'm going to roll with Maryland here as well. We're going to go quickly because Tony has got to go to some Michigan player availability here. So we'll go with Colorado, Nebraska. Nebraska 7.5 point favorites after losing to Colorado last year. Reiner, quickly, you think Deion has a chance in this one?
No, I don't. The defense was not up to par against North Dakota State. And, I just think that, Dylan Raiola showed enough in that game against UTEP in the opener to be able to kind of, basically put the hammer down on Colorado. And I think it's a bit of a revenge game for Matt Rule, too.
The Overhyped Bowl 2024, whichever team wins this game will be far overrated. Everybody will just jump out of their seats. It's just going to be an overreaction. So whoever wins this game this week, I will be fading next week for sure. But it is Nebraska. They've been waiting for a big spot, big game at home, and they have the perfect sweet spot of a team that comes in with a lot of juice. They're easy to root against. Kind of a lot of sizzle. There's not a ton of stake, right? And this is you can feel like you're in a big game, but you're really just playing Colorado. So Nebraska.
I'm going to differ from you guys here. I was actually I'll happily be wrong here, but first of all, I'm driving the Shedeur Sanders isn't going to be a really good NFL quarterback bandwagon. Secondly, that North Dakota State team was a what to beat. They just kind of are the worst kind of team that you want to play in week one because it's like a short putt in golf. You should make it. So that pressure of knowing you should make it makes it almost even tougher. That was North Dakota State. And Colorado's got some weapons on the outside this year. The much better offensive weapons outside of they got Travis Hunter, which they had last year. So you have Hunter with some better weapons. I'm going to go with Colorado and take the points here. And maybe I'm wrong. I think a lot of people will be on Nebraska, but I'm willing to take a chance there.
No, it's a lot of points. I wanted the points, but I fade Colorado. So.
And don't forget, Nebraska's home crowd against Colorado could have a problem. This was an old Big 12 matchup, Big 8 matchup, before that. And so, these teams don't like each other, and Nebraska's crowd is going to be a factor in this game, I think.
All right, we're going to do Lions here. I think all three of us have the Lions 3.5 point favorites over the Rams, right? All three taking the Lions?
The Super Bowl journey starts this weekend, and that's not hyperbole. The Lions are going to win the Super Bowl.
I agree. I think it's lining up for them. I really do think it's lining up for them.
There's a lot of pressure, and I think that they're more than capable. I just little pump the brakes a little bit. See how they do the first couple of weeks, and then we'll talk. But I love the roster. I love what Brad Holmes and Dick Campbell have done here.
Could they not win? Obviously. I mean, but it's just
a lot of pressure.
They've never ever been poised. They've never had. I mean, front to back, top to bottom, the roster, the balance, the vibes. I mean, that counts for something. Like Allen Park is the place of the NFL. It is not the dumpster fire. It is not like fill in the blank car crash that you all just drive down the road and turn and, ooh, that's something to look at. No, it is. I mean, they are the team. Dan Campbell is killing Applebee's commercials, right? I mean, he was actually I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was actually very funny. The vibes are so high in Detroit. I mean, they're talking about they want to set another like sound barrier record, right, against the Rams, and this is still Stafford. People are still fired up about that, and just because they got him in the one they wanted.
I don't disagree in the opener. I just again. There's a lot between now and the Super Bowl. I mean, shoot. I mean,
don't bring your logic into an impassioned discussion.
And spoken like someone who covered Jerry Jones and the Cowboys.
Yeah,
well,
sure.
I mean, I never subscribed to the hype of the Cowboys.
All right, so. I got to bounce. One of you take us out of here later.
All right, yep. So Tony actually has to go to Michigan availability here. So thank you to everyone who listened today. We got tons more great content coming throughout the week. Be sure to check out on the Free Press after Michigan games. Tony and Reiner, when Tony is not at his sister's wedding, are going to be recording, post-game videos, a lot like what you're listening to now, available almost immediately after the game online. So check those out. Thank you to our executive editor, Nicole Avery Nichols, and thank you to everyone who helps make this show possible. So we'll talk to you guys next week. In the meantime, enjoy the game. It should be a fantastic showdown between Michigan and Texas, and talk to you guys next week.